I built the tiniest e-reader in the world, or at least I think so. Hundreds of people started building it and improving it. So I rebuilt it from scratch and now it feels like a real product. And the best part is, you can build one yourself. A few weeks ago, I uploaded the first version of this, and this was basically where it was at back then. It already worked pretty well, but it was still kind of rough around the edges, and then things kind of took off. A lot of you started building it, and I began getting messages almost every day. I saw ideas, improvements, and even completely new designs. So over the last couple of weeks, I kept rebuilding it and slowly improved pretty much everything around it. So let's go through it and take a look at what changed. Also, all the files are available on my Ko-fi, and if you get the project once, you will get access to all future updates as well. Let's start with the hardware. The core idea stayed exactly the same. It is still controlled with just a single button, which I still think is the best solution for something like this. But one thing a few of you pointed out is that not every printer can reliably print these small pins that hold the case together. And yeah, that is definitely true. So I redesigned the case to make it a lot more reliable and easier to print overall. And this right here is my latest version of the case. The biggest change is how the two halves are held together now. Instead of using multiple small pins, there's now one larger piece that just slides into place, and the other side is secured with screws. That makes the whole thing a lot more reliable and also much easier to print, even in something like PLA. And to make everything a bit cleaner and more product-like, you can now also add M2 threaded inserts and screw everything together properly. So overall, it feels a lot more solid and much closer to a finished product. I do have to say though, it is also slightly bigger now. Personally, I do not really mind that, but the older version is still a bit smaller and maybe a bit nicer to hold. Another small addition is this little loop here, so you can attach something like a keychain or even a lanyard if you want to carry it around like that. I also slightly adjusted the button area just to give it a bit more space and make it feel nicer to press. And one thing a few of you mentioned is that the click sound is a bit too loud, and I noticed that as well, especially when using it in the evening. So I tried a really simple fix. Between this small plunger that presses the button and the button itself, you can just add a small piece of foam. In my case, I used a tiny self-adhesive piece and stuck it directly onto the button. And that alone reduces the click sound quite a bit, which in my opinion is more than enough for something like this. But that is enough about the hardware, because the really big changes happened in the firmware. Over the last couple of weeks, I kept tweaking things, and I definitely broke a few things along the way as well. But now, with version 2, which I am releasing together with this video, it is on a completely different level. Just to give you a quick idea of where we started, this was version 1. You had a really simple library view, a basic upload mode, and a simple web viewer where you could upload your books. You could already save bookmarks and even view them in the web interface. The font was pretty basic, but it worked. Overall, it was just a solid DIY setup. But a lot of you had ideas, and a big shout out to Philip here, who helped a lot with the early versions of the code and pushed things quite a bit further. After a few iterations, the whole system became a lot cleaner, especially the web viewer, which is now much more structured and easier to use. And one of the first bigger additions was folders. You can now organize your files properly instead of having everything in one long list. For example, you can group your books into one folder and other texts into another, which makes everything feel much more organized. Another really nice addition is that you can now customize the screensaver. Instead of having a fixed screen, you can upload your own design and make it feel a bit more personal. And of course, a lot of things also happened in the background. Things like better power efficiency, a more accurate battery reading, a more stable UI, support for more languages, and many small bug fixes that make the whole experience feel smoother overall. But now let's get into version 2, because this is where things really changed. One of the biggest issues I honestly fixed way too late. Up until version 1.5, I never really checked how much storage the device had. I would just upload a book and it worked, so I did not think much about it. but a lot of you kept asking how much storage it has and how many books you can fit on it. So here is the answer. The ESP32 has 8 MB of flash, and unfortunately on this board you cannot expand that. Now 8 MB does not sound like a lot at first, but for simple text it is quite a bit. The problem is you also need space for the firmware and a few other things. So in reality, the space you could use for books was only about 1.5 MB, and I did not notice that at first until I tried uploading multiple books. So with version 2 I changed that. By adjusting the partitioning, we can now use a lot more of the available storage and get roughly around 5.5 to 5.6 MB just for books. And the nice thing is, this is super easy to set up. It is basically just one click, and I have explained everything step by step in the guide. But I did not stop there. I also realized that most text files have a lot of unnecessary things like empty lines and extra spaces. So now, whenever you upload a book, it gets processed and compressed to take up as little space as possible. And in terms of real usage, a typical book with maybe 300 to 400 pages ends up being roughly around 0.5 to 0.6 MB. So you can fit somewhere around 6 to 10 books on the device at the same time, depending on the size. And to make this more transparent, I also added a storage indicator in the web viewer, so you can always see how much space you have left. But storage was not the only issue. Performance also improved quite a bit. The whole device feels much more responsive now, and one big improvement is that even if you are deep into a book, opening it is still almost instant. That used to be a problem before. The same goes for bookmarks. Everything is faster and more reliable now. And another really useful addition is that you can now jump to specific positions in a book. That is handled through the web viewer, since doing that with just one button would be a bit tricky. But this way it works really well. And now there's one more feature that kind of changes what this device can be used for. You can now create lists, not just for reading, but also for things like to-do lists, shopping lists, or whatever you want. You can create them in the web viewer, and they show up on the device under a separate section. Then you can go through them and check things off directly on the device. Everything can also be edited or deleted again in the web interface, so it is all simple and intuitive. And one more thing. A few of you asked if it is possible to export all bookmarks at once. That is now also included in version 2, which makes the whole bookmark system a lot more useful. I have probably read close to 1,000 pages on this thing by now, and I am still kind of in love with it. It is really fun to use, especially when you are out and about, and it is so small that you can take it anywhere. It is not much bigger than an AirPods case, but somehow it gets you to read more again. And honestly, that is probably the most important part. So if you like the idea, I can definitely recommend building one yourself. You will find everything you need linked below. And if you have not seen the first video yet, I have linked that up here as well, where I show how to build the whole thing step by step. And if you want to see more projects like this, feel free to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.